everyone.
Oh, hold on, Maureen. Hold on, Maureen.
Okay.
Takes a second sometimes. It's recording.
Okay. Welcome everyone to this virtual community meeting to discuss NPA 2023-0030.01.sh. If you haven't done so already, please let us know who is here in the chat box. If you're with an association, if you could include that as well, we will use this as a sign-in sheet. Please mute your microphone if you're joining by phone, and please turn off your video if you're participating online to save bandwidth. This meeting is being recorded and will be publicly posted to the publicinput.com/neighborhood plan amendment cases website. If you do not want your image viewed publicly, please turn off your camera. It's not forwarding. Hold on. Let me try again. There we go. So as you know, the property is in the South Austin Combined Neighborhood Planning Area, Garrison Park. My name is Maureen Meredith. I am the Plan Amendment Planner. Nancy Estrada is the Zoning Case Manager, and Mark Walters will be the meeting facilitator tonight. Nancy Estrada, the Zoning Case Manager, will not be at tonight's meeting. So Leah, the agent, will be able to answer zoning questions, and or Mark or I if it's something that we can answer. The agenda tonight, I'll go over basic case information, guidelines for group discussion, how to participate in this process, why is there a plan amendment application, what is a future land use map. I'll do a brief presentation, then Leah will do a presentation, and we will open the floor to questions and answers. Property address is 711 Eberhart Lane. It's 1.65 acres. The plan amendment case number is NPA 2023-0030.01.sh, and the SH stands for Smart Housing, safe, mixed income, accessible, reasonably priced, and transit oriented. Project name is Mission South. The request is to change the character district from neighborhood node to mixed use activity hub corridor. The associated zoning case number is C14 2023-0007.sh. The proposed zoning change is a request to go from LR, neighborhood commercial, neighborhood plan to GRMUVNP for a multifamily residential development, and that's community commercial mixed use, vertical mixed use neighborhood plan. Property owner applicant is SVAG Amazon, and the agent is Leah Bojo from Drenner Group. Guidelines for the discussion tonight. Please feel free to type your questions into the chat at any time during this meeting. If you could postpone general comments during the Q&A session. After staff and applicant presentations, if you would like to speak, please raise your hand by clicking on the hand symbol on your menu bar, which could either be at the top or the bottom of your screen, however you have it set up. Telephone participants will be able to speak during the Q&A session, and we will call out the last 4 digits of your phone number. Attendees will be muted upon arrival and through the staff and applicant presentations. Then we will open the floor to the Q&A. And like I said, you'll be able to put your questions in the chat or raise your hand. If there are similar questions, they may be grouped and answered together. Again, we ask that you mute your microphone when you're not speaking for the sake of sound quality. And if you're having connection issues, please turn off your video. We ask that you be respectful to each other during the meeting discussion. How to participate in this process. As I mentioned earlier, the recorded meeting will be posted to the public input website on the screen. You can email me or Nancy Estrada with any questions you have after the meeting. If you provide written comments, we will include them in the staff case report when we submit them to Planning Commission and City Council. When the cases are scheduled for Planning Commission and City Council, if you live within 500 feet of the property, you will get the public hearing notice in the mail with the date, time, and location, and also instructions for how to participate virtually. So why So why is there a neighborhood plan amendment? So neighborhood plans are adopted by City Council as amendments to the Imagine Austin Comprehensive Plan. The city charter requires zoning changes to be consistent with the comprehensive plan, and most neighborhood plan amendments are amendments to the plan's future land use map. And also, most neighborhood plan amendment cases have an associated zoning application. This map shows the areas in blue that have City Council approved neighborhood plans, most of which have a plan document, like the South Austin Combined Neighborhood Plan that has the vision and goals of the planning area, and also a future land use map. The South Austin Combined Neighborhood Planning area has character districts. The current character district is Neighborhood Node, and the proposed is the Mixed Use Activity Hub Corridor. And there's the property, as you can see, it's on the south side of Eberhart, and is on the west side of South First and just north of William Cannon. Here's the aerial photo that shows some of the development, and also a Google map that shows some of the surrounding uses. This is the future land use map that shows to the north and along South First to the south of the property is the neighborhood node. Across the street to the west is the South Congress planning area. The brown is mixed use. The zoning map shows the current zoning on the property as LR, that's neighborhood commercial. This is the Imagine Austin growth concept map that shows the location of regional centers, town centers, neighborhood centers, and activity corridors. This map shows the property is not within a activity center, but it is near the South First Activity Corridor and just north of the William Cannon Activity Corridor. Here's a map that shows the property in relation to the surrounding public transportation. They have some along South First, William Cannon, and to the east on South Congress. I'll stop sharing my screen and Leah can start her presentation.
Thank you, Maureen. I will share my screen. Everybody can see that?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Leah Bojo with Drenner Group, working on this project. Tamaria Davis, who's also on the meeting, is working on it with me. So as Maureen said, it's located at 711 Eberhart. I'm going to go through this at a high level, if that's okay with y'all, and then we can have questions at the end. I'll do my best to answer any questions you may have, and if I can't answer them right now, I'll go get the information and send it out to everybody after the meeting. So as Maureen said, this is where the site is located on the south side of Eberhart, just one property in from South First. A couple folks have asked me already if we are going to be incorporating it into this parcel on South First. That is not the case. This is the only parcel that would be included. Oops, I'm having trouble now with my, there we go. You can see if you zoom in, there is currently a very small 27 unit apartment building from the early 70s on the site that will be redeveloped. It is nearing the end of its useful life. We are working with the tenants. We've been in quite a bit of communication with them so far, and we'll continue to be and have made some commitments to them as far as communication and notice and some other tenant protections that we'll be working through as we go through the zoning process. The site is about 1.65 acres in size. Like I said, it's 27 units. It's interesting actually that it's on LR zoning, which is not a base district that actually allows multifamily. So I think it's from a while back when they maybe weren't enforcing that. But it's a great location for multifamily. It has excellent transit frequency with the 10 route close by, and is very close to a few major corridors, including obviously just a couple minutes from South First Street. Here is a map to show you the changes that we're proposing from LRNP to GRV MUNP, and then like Maureen said, from neighborhood node to mixed use activity hub corridor. Robert, do you want to go ahead and ask your question now? Do I see a hand up? Or maybe not. Maybe we can have it at the end. So what we're proposing, and these are sort of very round numbers at this point, but we're proposing 180 rental units. We are asking for the vertical mixed use overlay so that we could provide 10% of the units at 60% MFI, provide the ground floor pedestrian oriented uses, and then the streetscape improvements that come with VMU. We are hoping to do an affordability unlocked project here, but because that will require some more funding and other things, we're not sure that we can commit to that, which is why we're asking for the V, but I want to be transparent with everyone that that is the goal. And then, like I said a minute ago, we are working with the tenants so far, and we'll continue to work with them on support for their relocation and right to return when the project is redeveloped and things like that. We did look through your neighborhood plan and find some encouraging components. Your neighborhood plan talks a lot, obviously, as you all know, about complete communities, about mobility, about affordable housing, about location efficient neighborhoods that have safe ways to bike and walk and take transit, which all of these things I think this location supports very well. And then, like I said, here's my contact information. Anyone who wants to call or email at any time, I'm happy to continue to work with you after this meeting and provide you any information that I can as we work through the process. So with that, I will make myself available for questions.
Oh, Leo, as to the LR for the site, it's
Yes.
probably a relic of cumulative zoning where you could have multifamily and commercial back when, I don't know when that ended, but that's probably, considering the age of the date of the construction, that's probably why.
That makes sense.
Yes, if I can jump in, it's before the 1986 zoning revision.
Oh, okay.
It allowed office, commercial, and apartment.
I see. Thanks. 86, I'll remember it.
Okay, so here's your opportunity to ask questions. If you want to raise your hand or type it in the chat, we'd be happy to answer any and all questions that we can. And if not, we'll try to track down the answers. Yes, Ben. Or did you raise your hand?
You're
Oh,
muted.
yeah, you need to unmute.
Unmute.
There you go.
We can hear you now.
It keeps muting me automatically. Here we go. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can we talk about the size of the actual structure, the height, and how big it is going to be, especially in relation to the neighborhoods, the neighbors next door?
Sure. It'll be, we're looking at the height limit would be 60 feet for GR, and that's what we're proposing to build, probably a 4 to 5 story building. If it's vertical mixed use, it would have the stair stepping of compatibility.
Okay, I know that's been definitely a concern of some of the neighbors, but I'd like to hear some of them comment on that as well.
Sure.
Can I ask a question too? I don't have a raise your hand option here on the phone.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Okay, speaking of that, there have been, quote, relaxation of compatibility standards, especially when it's so narrow, a parcel like this one is. Has the council approved that, and what does that mean? Isn't there going to be some compatibility standards of height relative to distance from SF? And
Yes.
what would that be here?
The change, as far as I understand, the changes that have been passed so far that change compatibility would not affect the site because it's not on a Project Connect rail line, which is when the VMU compatibilities were changed, and then it's not on a big enough corridor for the corridor compatibility to change it. So this site under the VMU overlay would have the same compatibility that it would have before, that it would have had all along, which is 25 feet no build, 25 more feet at 30 feet or 2 stories, and then another 25 feet at 40 feet. And actually, I should correct myself. I think they took out the story limit. So I think it would just be 25 feet no build, 25 more feet of 30-foot height limit, another 50 feet of 40-foot height limit, and then another 100 feet of 50-foot height limit. So under that, under those compatibility setbacks, most of the site cannot be taller than 50 feet. Just the front corner would be able to reach 60. I'm not sure how they would incorporate that into design or if there would be any 60-foot part, but they are planning on a 4 to 5 story building under the VMU overlay. If we do an affordability unlocked project, that is a different, obviously that is a different, that is different, but those are the VMU rules and they haven't changed.
Leah, before we
So-
go on, there's a question in the chat from Monica Guzman. Actually, there's two. The first
Okay.
question, she would appreciate more details about plans for tenant relocation. Are you going through the official city process or unofficially working with tenants directly?
We are doing both. We will comply with the city process, but we are also working with the tenants to do some things that are more than what is required by the city code. So some of the things that we've talked about with the tenants are making, early notice. We haven't formalized any of these things yet, but we've talked about early notice to let them know when there are units to move back into. We've talked about meeting with organizations that can help folks find housing in the meantime or see if they qualify for any programs. We've talked about, we're not going to be breaking any leases. So, this is not a quick project. This is a longer term play. And so we have been in touch with them about kind of how that's all going to roll out. And as far as I understand, everyone understands and is comfortable with the timeline that we're proposing.
Okay, her
So we
second
don't really
question.
have,
Go ahead.
please. I was going to
Well,
say,
the
we don't have it all nailed down yet, but that's something that I could keep you all in the loop on as we get further down the line.
And the other question is, she's concerned about upper floors facing houses. Will these units have balconies? And if so, will they be Juliet or standard balconies? Or is this too early in the design phase to you to know that?
Yeah, it's too early in the design phase. We can certainly take that feedback into consideration when we get to that stage, but we're not anywhere near that point yet.
Ben raised his hand right before I asked those questions. Then after his questions, we'll go to Caitlin's questions in the chat.
Oh, is that me? Yeah, sorry. So you had kind of glossed over the other type of project that it might be, another affordable housing type. Sorry, I don't know all the acronyms.
That's okay.
Could you just give everybody another, an explanation of what that means too?
Yeah, Affordability Unlocked is a program that's available to the site today as well. It doesn't take a rezoning to use Affordability Unlocked. It does relax quite a few regulations like incompatibility. It gives you additional height, reduces parking, it eliminates parking, site area, things like that. But in exchange for that program, you have to do half of the units as affordable, and you have to do 20% of them as deeply affordable. So that is the goal of this project is to do that kind of project, but that type of project requires funding because of the deeply affordable units that it provides. So we can't say for sure that we'll be able to do that, which is why we're asking for the VMU. If that makes sense.
Okay. And can you comment about a couple of the other projects that are in our area? I know you've been involved in the one on the other side of South First Street, just in terms of what is kind of on the what's coming up for our neighborhood. There's another one that just was completed on Turtle Creek. I don't know if you have any knowledge of that project, but to give people an idea of how this project compares to those other two that are kind of new to our neighborhood.
I don't know anything about the project on Turtle Creek. I'm not sure who's running that one. I'd be happy to help you try to figure it out if you need that help. I did rezone the site across South First Street a few years ago, or maybe 3, 4, it's a little blurry, years ago. But I haven't worked on it in a long time. I haven't worked on it since the rezoning. It was a VMU project. Is I believe a VMU project. We rezoned to add a V, I believe. but I'm happy to check in with it, but I'd have to go back and see where they are today and kind of what they ended up building, because
Well,
kind of
and then maybe as
in
a
a way.
follow-up, can one of the city staff talk about the current zoning? Because I don't have the map right in front of me, and I think the one that was sent out was hard to read. You know, what I'm trying to have everybody understand, you know, what the change that's in store on Eberhart compared to, you know, a real world example. So that's a good one for a lot of us. Can someone on the city staff just?
I'm looking that up. I don't have that at my fingertips. Maureen might have that information more readily available. I'm having to go
It
to.
wasn't clear on
I
your map
cannot.
earlier in the presentation.
Give me a second and I'll look that up. So, does
I
anybody
think
else?
it's quite a bit bigger.
Is
if I
this the one
remember
at the
right.
northeast corner of Eberhart and South First Street?
Yes, and it's
Yes.
definitely
The one
bigger.
that it was like a
Yeah.
development that never happened?
Oh, it's happening now.
I know,
I
but
think
there
it
were curb
happened.
cuts. It was a vacant lot with curb cuts and
Yes.
Yes.
curbs.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Totally. From way back.
Well, I'm waiting to look that up. Caitlin Thone has a question. I'm concerned about the value of my property decreasing with a 4 to 5 story building directly behind me. Can you speak to how this will affect property values? And while you're doing that, I'll go look up that zoning.
I can do my best. I am not a property tax expert by any means, but my understanding is that property taxes are based on similar properties. So they would be based on other single family homes, not based on commercial or multifamily nearby. I don't really feel like I can go into much more detail than that, because that's just not something I really know the details of. But my understanding is that it would not change your appraisal, because that's not what they compare you to.
To Ben's question regarding the zoning on that property on the northeast corner of Eberhart and South First, it's community retail, mixed use, vertical mixed use, conditional overlay NP. But that's a lot of letters, but the MU allows a project to be built as commercial or multifamily or a mix of the two. V is the vertical mixed use. It allows you to do a mixed use building project, but there are some certain requirements. A CO means conditional overlay, which that means some part of the zoning has been restricted. Either the uses have made conditional, which means you need to go ask permission from the planning commission, or prohibited, and you just can't do those without a zoning change. And NP means it's in a neighborhood plan. But I wouldn't know what the CO is unless I was to pull up the ordinances and look that up.
I can track down that ordinance and send it to you, Ben, if you're interested in looking at it. I don't remember the CO either, but I can find it.
I'd appreciate
Yes,
that.
so
I'm
great.
sorry
Is
to
it-
interrupt, but hello?
Yes,
Whenever I have many questions, so when everybody else is finished, can you come back to me?
you bet.
Thanks.
So does anybody else have any questions at this time for either the applicant or staff? Hearing, okay, let me look at the people here. Someone has their hand up and I'm gonna go find them and call on them. Deb Hilbig,
Yeah.
if you would you're unmuted and just ask your question, please.
All right. My house backs up to the fourplexes that are on First, and there's a creek or a ditch behind my house that I've never had flooding issues so far, but I'm concerned with a lot more building a little bit further downstream that it might back up, and I'm concerned about future flooding.
So as part of the site plan process, all stormwater has to be taken care of on site. So the regulations have come a long way since this was built in 1972, and I would venture to say that you will be in a better situation. You certainly won't be in a worse one, but I would imagine that you'll actually be in a better one, because the environmental regulations are much more strict than they were if they even existed in 1972 when this was built. So we'll have detention requirements and all kinds of water quality and things like that we'll have to comply with. And I can give you more details when we get through to design and we get to the point where we're submitting those applications. I'm happy to share them with you at that time. We're not at that stage yet, but the code requires it.
Okay.
There's a question in the chat from Ken Keeley. It says, why do we need more apartments, multifamily homes, when so many of the newly built ones are not at rental capacity? And somebody else seconded traffic concerns. KT mentioned about the traffic generation from the site.
Well, I think to answer the first question, I think Austin definitely does need apartments and needs all kinds of housing, including, but not limited to rental units. I don't know if you're looking at specific projects that you feel aren't full yet, but the vacancy rate is still pretty high. So can promise you they wouldn't build it if they didn't think there were folks that wanted to rent those apartments. And the second question, about traffic, if I remember right.
Yes, well,
So
it was just the one word traffic, but I assume that means they have a concern about traffic being generated from the site.
So we will have to, when we submit our site plan, city staff will look at it again and decide if they want us to do a traffic analysis, or if they're just going to charge us a street impact, or I should say, if they're going to charge a street impact fee. There's a relatively new ordinance that requires just a fee per unit that gets paid to go into nearby improvements. We don't know what those are yet because that would be a determination that the city will make its site plan when they know exactly how many units we're building and all that. But that's how traffic would be handled on a site like this. I think part of what makes this a good site for multifamily is its proximity to good transit, good frequent transit, like the 10 route, and also walkable services, which there's quite a bit of nearby. I know that eventually South First is planned to have is a transit priority street, as well as plan to have a separated bike lane. So I know there are also sort of longer term visions for that street being multimodal.
Christy Holiday, you have your hand raised. Would you unmute and ask your question, please?
Yes, hi. So same concerns I think that a lot of us are raising about the height of the building. I live at the corner of Pavensey and Middleham Place and live on a corner lot, have a very nice large backyard, and I personally don't really want to be looking at a 5-story building, which is going to impede my view of the trees and the wildlife here. So I have quite a few concerns about the height of that, as well as what someone said about the drainage, but I do see that you've answered that question. And also the traffic, especially with a large multi-use residential going up at the corner across the street already and the one on Turtle Creek, we definitely get a lot of cut-through traffic. So we have a lot of concerns about people just speeding through off South First. And this is really just going to bring a lot more traffic to this very small neighborhood.
I can give you more information when we get, I'm sorry. I can give you more information when we get further down the line and get to the site plan. I know that's not a very satisfying answer, but we're just not at that place yet. But what I can tell you is that our access would be on Eberhart. So I don't imagine this would be a cut through. I don't think this would generate cut through traffic because of the way the streets are located, unless y'all know something.
It absolutely does. I mean, we see it already.
They wouldn't be able to get in or out at all. They sit at that light forever and they wouldn't be able to get in or out.
That's true too.
We'll get to the people with their hands raised. Right now, there's a couple questions in the chat, and I don't like to get those too far down. I tend to get lost. First of all, first question is from Ken Keeley, who asked what walkable services are nearby.
Why don't I, instead of looking at a map right now and listing them out, why don't I put that list together and I can either send it to you if you want to email me, or I can, I don't want to just look at my phone and tell you the things that we identified that are close by, but I'm happy to share that list of things that we think would be helpful.
And the other question is from Karen Hackman. My concern is traffic. I think you just addressed that on Eberhart and Cooper. It's already used as a cut-through street from First Street. Real issue of speeders. Also concerned about the lack of safe passage to Armadillo Park with increased usage from 2 large apartment complexes. Okay, you respond to that. I think you already addressed that. There will be a traffic analysis. Yes, that intersection can't accommodate the cars. Buildings will face Eberhart traffic already a problem. Eberhart Also residential street cut through is a problem. And then Doug Corey just says Doug Corey. I live here and am amazed that you reference walkable services. Again, you've already addressed that. Will there be parking garage with additional parking for visitors? As mentioned previously, traffic is an issue. Oh, thank you, Doug. Is an issue on First and Middleham. It is already concerning. Then if you add street parking, it'll just cause more issues.
I don't know at this point if we would have street parking or not.
Okay.
That would be a design issue, but again, when we get to that point, I'm happy to stay engaged and share that with you.
Okay, two people have their hands up. The first is KT. So would you unmute, and then we'll get to Ben right after that.
Yeah, the one that asked about the traffic. They go through here when that light changes 100 miles an hour. I'm exaggerating, and on each other's tail. Just, it's really bad. And that down the street before the complex, there's a school zone and a pedestrian crossing, and there's not a grocery store nearby that you can walk to except maybe Sprouts, and I can't walk there. So that's all I had to say. The traffic is really bad already, and with all the other stuff, it's going to be too much. Can't see it happening.
Thank you. Ben's next, and then followed by Jared Subler.
I'd like to hear what Jared has to say actually first.
Okay, Jared, unmute and ask your question.
Hey, do you know whether the applicant plans to hold the property and develop it themselves, or are they just flipping this and selling?
They're planning it to develop it themselves.
Gotcha. Do you have any of their initial yield studies that they did for the property?
We have done some yield studies. I don't know. I'm happy to ask them what they have that we can share that is close to what we're planning.
Yeah, that would be great. Do you know what kind of program they're looking at for the pedestrian-oriented uses at the ground floor?
I don't know. You mean like what kind of tenant they'd be looking for?
Well, if it's a VMU property, you could have a live work unit, or it could be like an office or retail. So
Right.
I'm just curious to see what type of, what type of tenant they are looking for and how that works in their pro forma and pencils out. I imagine they've already kind of got an idea of what they would want there.
I'm happy to ask them. I think a little bit though, it depends also on whether they do the VMU or whether they do an affordability unlock project, because obviously they have different requirements. But I'm happy to ask if they have any ideas about that, particularly if it's going to be live, work, or commercial.
Gotcha. Another question. So if they do the two avenues, so one VMU, one affordability unlocked, does the compatibility envelope become affected with either of those avenues, or is it the same for both?
No, affordability unlocked does not have does not trigger compatibility. Only the VMU is the one that I described earlier. I don't know if you were on, but VMU has a.
So if they went for affordability unlocked, then there would not be a compatibility envelope.
Correct.
Gotcha. Are there any other
Sorry,
step backs or checks related to affordability unlocked?
There are setbacks, and there is a utility easement, which is probably the bigger setback for an affordability project, affordability unlocked project. There is, I believe, a 15-foot wide easement that goes around the eastern and southern property lines that would certainly serve as a setback. Also, it would depend on how they would serve it for fire and driveway and things like that. So there's a few different ways that the site would be designed if it were an affordability unlocked project that aren't dictated by affordability unlocked, but that would kind of work the same way as far as setbacks from the single family neighborhood y'all are talking about.
Gotcha.
So makes sense.
And sorry if you've went into this before, but affordability unlocked, does that provide 100% affordability in the project?
50.
50?
It's
Okay,
a half.
gotcha.
Yeah, it's half affordable. 50% at, I believe, 60% MFI, 20% at 50% MFI, I believe. I shouldn't be quoting these things off the top of my head. It's dangerous, but and then half of it is market.
Okay, thanks.
Let me make sure I'll check those numbers and make sure that I said that right, but it's close.
It sounds
Yeah.
close.
Okay, it's close at least.
Ben, could you unmute and ask your question? Then we'll go to Robert Wald. Then I'll go and check the chat for questions.
Yeah, and I mean, I know this isn't the first time you've been through this, and you could probably have anticipated this, but I think for a lot of us, the difficulty of being okay with the zoning change or not, it's a hard decision for a lot of us because we don't know exactly what the site plan looks like, and obviously we're not a site plan review, but it's also a difficult sell for all of our neighbors to be like, well, trust the process. Don't worry about the drainage. Don't worry about the traffic. We're going to get something. Oh, don't worry about the height. It won't be 5 stories. It might be 4 because of this or that. That's a difficult situation for us as a neighborhood and a small existing community to be like, oh boy, we're getting a great addition to our neighborhood, something that we really want and is going to benefit all of us versus just kind of something shoved down our throats that we're going to have to deal with. And so how we feel as a group and all of us individually, it's hard to know how we're going to feel right now.
Sure.
And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ben. Robert Wald, would you unmute and ask your question, please? Robert, you there? Well, because I can't unmute them from my side of things. So I'll go check the chat once again. KT said they would like to see the map again of units,
Sure.
but you don't really have that, do you?
A map of units?
That's what the
Was
question
it in my
was.
presentation?
Yeah.
I'm happy to show my presentation. I'll click through and y'all tell me what you're. Yeah, I don't know if this is what you're thinking of, maybe with the zoning on it.
I think there was an aerial
I
photograph.
think it was the next one. Yeah, it was the
That one?
one that showed the units.
I think it was the aerial. Because you don't have a sketch plan at all, do you?
No, we don't have. No, we don't have a site layout.
Okay. Well, when they said how many units it was going to hold, they kind of showed a design or something. Maybe it was before.
No, I think in Maureen's first presentation, it was just simply
I
an
think it
aerial
was
map.
that one back there. Yeah, that one back there. 3, 4 back. Yep. Keep going back. Right there, that one, I think it was.
Oh, okay.
You just passed it. Yeah,
Is it
go
here
back one
with-
and stop. Yeah, this one. I was thinking. I'm not sure. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
No, that wasn't. Okay. Never mind.
Okay.
I am worried
Well-
about that creek though.
Yeah.
Well, Robert, Ben, Robert doesn't seem to be unable to unmute, but Ben, unmute, and then from here, I'll go to Ms. Goodman.
Okay, yeah, just one more thing. I'd like to talk a little bit more about the neighborhood plan and the existing designation as neighborhood node. And, it seems like everything around that, including the stuff that's closer to South First Street, is neighborhood node. So doing something that's essentially like bigger, denser, less of a node, more of a for everybody else, not in our neighborhood kind of a use. How does that square with the existing uses, the planned uses? Is it just, is it a matter of time before we just throw the whole neighborhood plan out? Are we really thinking that this is our plan, or I'm just interested to hear people's thoughts on that.
Well, council did establish a process by which neighborhood plans can be amended. And not to say that all requests are supported or many, so it's the property owner's right to ask this request to change the neighborhood plan as well as change their zoning. And there's an established process for both of those. I don't know if that's a very satisfactory.
Well, I mean, is Maureen on here? I mean, she's the neighborhood plan person. Could she talk a little bit about, what really is our neighborhood plan, and how does this change fit into what we hope is actually a good plan?
Mark is my supervisor, so he answered your question.
Okay, I'll just leave that thought there with y'all, and
Okay.
maybe just pass it on to Jackie.
Ms. Goodman, would you ask your questions, please?
Oh, oh, thanks a lot. I have a lot, and I'm not going to burden us with all of them, but I'm just going to list out a few and also say, relative to the question about value of our property, that I think will be decided a lot by what the corridor requirement or corridor allowance for the height and density increase deep into the neighborhood, deeper. I think that will have an issue for us to look at about the value. So, as Austinites surely know by now, speculative zoning and building does happen. So yeah, the stuff about vacancies is an issue too. What I'd like to know though, once upon a time, zoning required site plan information with it. That's no longer the case. So there are, however, site plan issues that need to be nailed down at time of zoning, condition of zoning, unless the public is still allowed a public hearing and public discussion during site plan. So that's one question. Does that happen? The drainage is going to have to be increased, and surely there must be some thought about how you're going to increase capacity, because both street drainage and the drainage ditch, which used to be just Turtle Creek, Dry Creek, is going to have to handle more runoff in a storm event. And whether your thinking is for this project that would include something like channelization of Turtle Creek there as a drainage recipient, and at what point would you stop channelizing? Because you're right by Williamson Creek as well, which does still flood. That's what the buyouts were to improve on, but more runoff means maybe more increased capacity there too. And it does have a confluence with Onion, which their drainage capacity has not been increased that much. So we have everything from this ridge goes downhill, and those are the receiving bodies. I would like to know at this time if parking accommodation is part of the expectation if you're not going to be able to go for the other option, the affordable, and whether or not that's planned to be like one story or 2 stories covered, whatever, because that'll make a big difference on drainage. I would also like to know about that walkable services thing, since we have fairly recently been abandoned as far as grocery services. And the earlier speaker was right. It's not walkable to go to a grocery store around here anymore. And I'd like to know if there is anticipated intersection improvement for traffic management. Especially, it seems like you should have an idea of what the cumulative impact is going to be from the west side and the east side with their newly planned densities, because we do not have a transit system that will handle getting to destinations from all these people, even a relatively small amount. 80 in the general complex of things is not a huge development, but it is impactful, especially on this little neighborhood street, and there are no widening of right-of-way plans that I know of, either here at the intersection or across the street. So that'll make a difference too, especially this close to William Cannon. The other one is, I don't know if I asked you when I said the stuff about drainage capacity. Do you plan to look at green infrastructure in addition to any kind of channelization or increased capacity of the drainage ditch? And okay, I'll leave it there. Oh, now there was one more thing. If you stay with this option, are you going to stair step the height? And do you actually have room to really do that?
So Lee, you want to take a shot at that?
I will have to get back to you on most of those because a lot of those are civil engineer questions or architect questions about the space and the drainage and the stair stepping and all of that. So I'm going to have to work through some of those if that's okay and see what information I can get together. I know earlier I was asked for massing and things like that. So let me see what I can find. Those are not zoning questions. That's what I know.
They are related, and I would think that you would anticipate they were being asked.
Yep, let me see what I can find out.
Thanks.
Hey, Ben, would you unmute and ask your question?
Oh, okay. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'm just, really appreciate all the answers that you can give today, but I sincerely hope that, we can soon have a follow-up meeting on all of these, maybe in person. I know we have to check the box on this online meeting, but, we certainly have some neighbors who are very engaged and concerned and, but also have some technical and policy knowledge on a lot of these questions. So, I hope that in short order we can all get together and have an in-depth conversation on every one of these topics, even the prospective stuff that we're jumping the gun on, perhaps.
So, Leah, do the folks have your? I assume they have your contact information.
Yeah, I'll put it back up just to make sure.
Okay, and like Maureen said at the outset of the meeting, this meeting's being recorded, and once we're done, it'll be posted to that website that you mentioned. So if you know people who weren't able to attend tonight, they will be able to go the next day or two and view the meeting and at least get a general idea of what the case is and what the project is. There was something in the question in the chat from Caitlin Thone. Sorry if she missed this. What info do you have so far on the timeline, estimated date for breaking ground, etc.? And additionally, what are the regulations on hours of construction? Concerned about the noise.
Our timeline, I don't have a timeline for breaking ground. The only timeline I have right now, and I can ask my folks, I'm sure someone has it, I just don't have it, the construction timeline, but we are planning to go to Planning Commission at the end of this month on the 28th. And I can get you the city, I don't know it off the top of my head, but I can get you the city ordinance on hours of construction. I'm happy to send that out. Or I don't know if Mark, if you or Maureen know that more readily than I do.
I don't know it off the top of my head, so I don't want to provide bad information. Monica,
and if for some reason, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
But it's not letting me share my screen again for some reason, so I can't pull my contact information back up. But I know, Ben, you have it. I know Jackie has it. Obviously, Mark and Maureen have it. So I'm happy to share my phone number right now if y'all want, or if you just want, or it'll be posted when the video posts. But I'll circulate this follow-up information as best I can and get it out to everybody. That's okay.
And there's two questions in the chat, one from Monica Guzman regarding affordability. Can Leah share the unit numbers at what MFIs accessible while we're in the meeting, or is more time needed?
I can tell you what the different programs would require. I talked about that a little bit earlier. I know that the VMU is an easy one. It's 10% at 60% MFI for rental. So I can tell you for sure that if we do a VMU project, that's what it would be. The affordability unlocked, I believe, and I'll confirm this, I'll send the ordinance around, but I believe that I know it's 50% of the units. I believe it's 50% at 60% MFI. And then 20% of the units are at 50% MFI. I'm 95% sure that that's the breakdown. I'll send it out around a confirmation when I send out other information, but I'm pretty sure that's the requirement for affordability unlocked.
So half of the units need to be somewhere deeply affordable, 50 to 60.
Right.
Some
Exactly.
combination thereof.
Exactly.
And Carolyn Shelley notes that these types of meetings are difficult for people who don't do these all that often. I appreciate your comment there, ma'am. Does anybody else have any other questions at this time? This is your opportunity right now for today, and it sounds like there'll be some follow-up meetings after this in the days to come before the 28th. So does anybody else have any questions? If not, Maureen, can you get queue up your closeout slide? Because the meeting does not have to expand to the time allotted for it, so we can get on with our lives a little earlier. But if people have questions, the meeting is scheduled to 7:30, so we'll be happy to be here till then. But
you know what? I'm so sorry. I should correct that. I misspoke. We are not scheduled for the 28th. I don't think we're scheduled yet. I'm so sorry. It just occurred to me after I said that I didn't know that was right. So we would know by now if we're going on the 28th, and we are not scheduled for the 28th. So maybe sometime in April. Planning commission meets on the second and fourth Tuesdays. So, but I will let y'all know when I have a date. But I'm so sorry for that. That was not quite right.
Okay, Maureen, you want to go over the next steps in the process and
Yes. So here's my contact information. So what will happen is our planning team will meet and we'll make a recommendation on the plan amendment request. We'll pass that on to the zoning planner. They will meet and make a zoning recommendation. I will work with the planning contact team on any follow-up if they have any questions from this meeting that needed to be followed up and answered. When the case is scheduled for Planning Commission and City Council, I'll reach out to the planning contact team and let them know the date and what date, if they wanted to submit a letter of recommendation, what date they would need to submit that to have that included in the staff case report. That's about all.
so Leah, before we
step
on somebody? No, before we sign off, do you have any closing comments or statement?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I look forward to continuing the conversation.
So, Monica has a question. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that I had a follow-up question, and Kim Keeley also had another question in the chat box.
Oh, I might have missed that. Thank you for catching that, please.
But I'll be quick. I mean, and also Carolyn Shelley made a comment, which is something more like I would say, is that virtual meetings are not always accessible, especially people who have unreliable internet or they're not accustomed to it. So
I know, I do appreciate that. I acknowledge that. It's not necessarily the perfect, but that's how we've been doing these meetings, and I do appreciate the comment. I wasn't trying to be dismissive in the least. I appreciate that.
But
understand the concern.
Yeah, my follow-up question regarding the affordability. I realize you're looking at affordability unlocked or VMU. Regardless of which one you go with, why not more units at each MFI level? So VMU, why just 10% at 10% of the units? Why not 15, 20, 25? That happens in other municipalities, other urban cities in other states. I don't understand why in Austin, this is not targeting you, Leah, or anybody tied to the developer or anything. It's just other cities are doing it. Developers are making it happen. Why is it such an issue here in Austin? We have people.
She cut out.
Yeah,
Did y'all hear anything I said?
it cut out.
Okay. Basically what I was asking about was regardless of which way you go, BMU or affordability unlocked, why at those particular percentages in terms of units? So why 10% of the units at 60% MFI? Why not more units? The 15, 20, 25, because that is done in other cities, in other states. And the affordability unlocked, again, why, I can't remember what it was, 50% at 50% of the half of the units at 60% MFI, and whatever the other one was at 50% MFI. Why not more units at each of those? Or why not even the 10 or 20% at a deeper MFI, like 40%? And like I said, what I was saying is that many people in this city are struggling. I mean, I live at the northern end of the Eastern Crescent. I personally am doing fine, but I know what it is. I've been in those shoes. And when people are struggling and they're having to move, even if they're not having to relocate temporarily, if they have children, that's disruptive to the children's education, and as well as their mental and emotional health. I'm sure Miss Jackie can speak to that since she has early childhood and a teacher in her background. I mean, I'm just pushing the message that, if I recall correctly, is these all sound like the minimum required number of units, the 10% baseline. So why not more units? Why not a deeper FMI? That's really the in a nutshell, regardless of which program.
I had a concern. I was wondering if you even looked at trying to make the entrance off of First and take over the corner.
Go. Here we go. Okay. Sorry, I got muted and I couldn't unmute. I don't think we can, we can't take access across property we don't own. We just own this piece.
Okay, Ben, would you unmute and ask your question?
You say we, and your client, the property owner, SVAG Amazon. Can you tell us who they are? Like, Gary, who's on this call, knew the old owner. He was a guy, and so this sounds like some real estate holding company, kind of a faceless entity. And can you shed some light on kind of who they are, who their investors are, what other projects they've done in our neighborhood already?
They have not. I cannot tell you who their investors are. I don't know that. I say we as a representative of the applicant.
Sure.
I'm not a part of that company. They have done projects not in this neighborhood, but they have done other projects in Austin. They've done a project. They've done a few different projects. They did one on East 5th Street that was an office building. I'm happy to share some of the things that they've done around town.
Yeah, if you could, maybe email that to whoever you have contact with me and whoever else will share that with the group, because that's, I think, relevant.
Okay.
Any more questions? I know when we put the final slide up, it always elicits more questions. So, you know, this is, folks, this is your opportunity, so I encourage you to avail yourself of it. If not, we, like I said, we can end the meeting early. So hearing no questions, I'm gonna go check the chat one more time. I said one neighbor was unable to log in. Well, this will be posted and they will be able to watch it in the next couple of days, Ben, and they can ask questions of either Maureen or the zoning case manager. So, and all questions and correspondence, email or written correspondence will be included in the staff report for the Planning Commission, the City Council, as Maureen stated at the outset. So, and Kim Keeley asked, when might they expect some concrete plans and timelines?
They may have timelines for, I just don't know what they are. So I'll have to just talk to the folks about the redevelopment timeline and get back to you.
Okay.
I just work on the zoning. I just come in for this part. I don't always know what the rest of the project timeline looks like.
Okay. Well, hearing or seeing no more questions, I'd like to wish everybody a good evening. And like we said earlier, if you have questions, reach out to Maureen or the zoning case manager, and they'll do our best to get the questions back to you. And then feel free to, of course, send them to anybody who might be interested. And the presentations, I think, will also be up on that website. After, at least the staff presentation will be up there for people to look at afterwards. So with that, I'd like to wish everybody a good evening, and thank you for sharing part of your evening with us to find out about this project. Yeah, everyone have a good night.
Thanks, everybody.